All right, it's time to talk basketball. I'm Jose Salviati, editor at thepeachbasket.net. He is Steve Purciello, the host of Celtic Chalk Talk, not a host. He is the host of Celtic Chalk Talk. He's also a longtime educator, vice principal, high school basketball coach, and athletic director. And together, we are the Shot Clock Pod. The Shot Clock Pod was born out of the content in Steve's 13 Rules, random NBA thoughts articles, which he publishes weekly. Steve and I have exactly 24 minutes to discuss what's on his mind around the NBA. Today, we will not be discussing his latest 13 Rules Random NBA Thoughts article. We're going to be discussing one that he has been wrote a while back. Over the last couple of weeks, he has been sharing his thoughts on the changes in the East and Western Conference over this pretty wild offseason. So we are going to continue that conversation on the West today. But before we get to that, if you are listening, we are grateful. Thank you. Please know that you are listening to one of a few independent fan-driven shows on the Peach Basket Podcast network of shows. We're not owned by a big media company, which means what you hear comes straight from real fans. No agenda. No, you have to talk about this. Avoid that. We just talk about the game we love. If you believe voices like this should be heard, the best way to support us is simple. Keep listening, tell a friend, like, comment, subscribe. It all means the world to us, and we're grateful for all of it. When this episode ends, head over to the Peach Basket Podcast Network, head over to thepeachbasket.net, check out more fan-run podcasts, and help this independent network grow the way it started, organically, one hoops fan like yourself at a time. We're grateful you're here. Thank you. All right, so we are ready. I'm ready to continue our conversation on the West. We got more to talk about. Steve, are you ready?
Ready.
Let's do it. I'm going to start the clock now. All right, so last week we focused on the West, and there's a lot to talk about in the West. Obviously, one LeBron James move. We talked about that. It might come up again today. We talked about the Spurs and Wemby's extension. We've talked about last week, and we'll link to that show if you missed any of this. The Oklahoma City Thunder's second apron casualties. We talked about the Lakers, and we talked about the Minnesota Timberwolves. More to talk about. We're going to start with a team that won the NBA championship, won it all not too long ago, but just seems to be in a bit of disarray. And that's the team that plays in Colorado, the Denver Nuggets. Now, I got to ask you straight here, and we'll talk about what the Nuggets did and didn't do. But are they wasting the final years of three-time MVP Nikola Jokić? It kind of looks like maybe they lost Jonas Valanciunas, Tim Hardaway Jr. They acquired Marvin Bagley, Tyus Jones, Bruce Brown, and who knows what's going to happen with Peyton Watson. What's going on, man, in Denver?
They're on the obviously the downside of the mountain.
Yeah.
When a couple years ago, when they won the title, the Kroenkes, they're the owners, didn't want to spend money to keep it going. That's when they should have tried to keep it going for the next year. In fact, they didn't want to pay the tax and all that, so they kept salaries down and they didn't bring players in. Now it's a couple years later, they are paying tax, and they are, I believe they're in the second apron, and it's getting late. Murray gets hurt a lot. Gordon is hurt often, so it's very hard. These guys are getting older. They're not getting better, and it's not a great situation. They're trying to put Band-Aids on an open heart. It's just not a good situation. Jokić, yeah, they are wasting his best years. He's loyal. He appears to be loyal, and he'll play with them till the end. But I don't think, unless something crazy happens, I don't think there'll be many more titles.
That is sad. I'm surprised, and I hate to admit it, but I'm going to admit it. I did not know that the Nuggets were owned by Kroenke. This is the same Kroenke that moved the Los Angeles Rams from Los Angeles to St. Louis. I did not know that this guy's empire extended.
It's huge. It's huge.
Yeah, apparently. He's not well liked here in LA because of that move. But yeah, I didn't know that. Obviously, he had some success in St. Louis with the Rams. They won it all. And obviously, he's had some success in Denver because they won it all. So good for him. But this is not this is an ownership with kind of a problematic past across different franchises, right?
Well, sports are interesting. And I know we all get caught up on trades and we get caught up on general managers and coaches and all that. But if you want to learn about teams, generally look at ownership. The Knicks this year were an exception because their owner's not the best in the
Yeah.
world. But most times, the good owners can win. And the Kroenkes obviously are a business, are in it for the money. And some ownerships are in it for the money. And let me just explain. If you're under the cap and you're not a tax team and can get the money, in other words, all the teams that pay tax, it's divided up among the teams that are not paying tax. So you're going to make money. That's why Michael Jordan made a lot of money with bad teams. So there's a lot of ways for ownership, and you got to analyze that. Are they willing to spend to win? Denver, I think he's thinking about it now because I guess Jokic's contract's coming due, and he doesn't want to lose him. But they're not very big on the money. They weren't very big on the money spending, and they wasted Jokic's best years.
Yeah. Yeah, well put. I have no words,
Yeah,
nothing to add to that. Oh, well put. I'm still rocked by the fact that Kroenke owns the Nuggets. I did not know that. But let's stay in the West. Obviously, all this whole conversation is in the West. Let's stay with a team that kind of like the Nuggets in a sense that they've had a lot of potential. They just haven't met it. Whereas the Nuggets obviously raised the banner that one time. This team recently has not, and that's the Houston Rockets. So you wrote a lot about what they have done and what they haven't done. I want to key in on how important Fred VanVleet coming back is important to them because he was missed last season. They lost Dorian Finney-Smith. They re-signed Tate. They signed Marcus Smart, who was in spots pretty good for the Lakers last season. Bogdanovich also brought on, who I think might be at the end of his run. And of course, they got 39-year-old Kevin Durant. Does the does it all hinge on Van Vliet's return for the Rockets? Is he that important to this team?
I think it's important. I also think it's important that a guy like Şengün takes his game to the next level.
Mm,
I think there's a lot of factors. Last year, by the end of the season, they seemed like a dispirited group that just were tired of each other
yeah,
and just weren't happy. You had Durant starting that stuff where he was from a fake account knocking
yeah,
teammates, and a lot of different things went on. The other thing too, they got Durant, a good scorer. By the way, he played more minutes last year than he played in quite a few years, but a good scorer and all, but not a leader. And they do need a Van
mm,
Vliet, and the other person, which don't overlook getting Marcus Smart. Marcus Smart likes to win, and he'll do whatever it is to win if he's healthy. So that could help. The hard part is Smart is going to be a bench player, and Van Vliet, we don't know what he's going to be like without it, with the knee. Those are the guys, not your Şengüns and not your Durants that are leaders, and that's a shaky thing. And I think Udoka last year was wearing on his players. I don't know what reaction is going to be this year to him. And then you got the other factor, Durant's 39. How many more years is he going to be as productive as he was last year? It's just, there's so many factors. Do they have talent? Yes. Thompson is one of the best defensive players in the league. I like Jabari Smith as a complementary player. They've got some talent, but I don't feel that they're ready to make that next step.
yeah. There's a lot going on there. I think you use the word disengaged or something, and that's definitely how it looks in Houston, which makes it all the more interesting that there's a rumor going on, and there's obviously this is rumor mill time that Russell Westbrook, who's currently unsigned, there's been some interest bringing him into Houston. If you are a disengaged franchise, why would you consider bringing in the guy who is a phenomenal player, but you look at his last three stops, there's been disengagement there. It just doesn't seem like this is the right guy for the Houston Rockets. What do you think?
Well, of course not. I think Westbrook is the perfect player because he's cheap, but the perfect player for a team that's not very good and buying a year or two. And yeah, you might not be able to develop one player because you're using him, but he's
Yeah.
exciting and people will come to see. I don't take him too seriously when it comes to winning. Um, so he's good in that role, and that maybe Houston needs to do it. I don't see that. I think you look at the best player on a team, and then you try to decide, do they care about winning or they care about themselves?
Hmm.
I don't know if Houston, those players are concerned about the winning or themselves at this point. So that's not a good situation to be in.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. Tough situation, which is odd because Houston, like you said, has great players, really good players. We'll see how things play out this season, this coming up season for Houston. Let's move to the Phoenix Suns. The Phoenix Suns, I think, started off pretty well last season, petered out a little bit. You called out that they appear to be improving, but in very small increments. So they're improving at a snail's pace, which I'd rather do that than go in the opposite direction or to not move at all. This year, they signed Luke Kennard, Miles Bridges in a trade. They lost Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal. So no Allen, no O'Neal. You bring in Kennard, who was really good for the Lakers last season, and Bridges, who I think is a solid player. That's a better team. What is this, a play-in team at best? Is this maybe a ceiling? Maybe finishing sixth or fifth potentially. What do you see?
Yeah, maybe. I doubt it, but maybe. There's something to notice here. There's a guy on that team that his teams are usually decent. Every other team hates him. Every team in the league hates him except his teammates. You know who I'm talking about, right? Dillon
Uh,
Brooks.
um, you're
Dillon
talking about
Brooks.
Dillon Brooks.
Yeah. And you know what? He's a pain in the neck. But you know what? He wins.
Yeah,
Teams overachieve when he's around. They don't underachieve.
right.
So there's a lot to be said about him. And you're bringing in Miles Bridges. Now you've got another legit scorer. So you're improving. They do have a problem with size. They're not real good with big, but they're improving. Bridges, it's on his last year of his contract, so he's going to be on his best behavior. He and Booker, they're going to get you some points. And Brooks will get his 18 to 20 a game. So now you got something that's developing. I missed the other guy from Houston that they got a couple of years ago, the guard. I missed him, but he can score also. You know who I mean. I can't think of a name off the top of my head. The one they traded, he was a second or third pick in the draft. I can't, oh God, my mind has slipped. But anyway, he can score. He played with Houston. He's a guard. He's a shooter, great shooter. But anyway, so they got some pieces. I don't know if they have the size, but they have some scorers that can play. Did you figure out who I was talking about?
I spent some time looking up Dillon Brooks' numbers, so I didn't go down
Oh,
that
okay.
rabbit hole. But we'll see if we can get that before we end the show. But I'm fascinated by Dillon Brooks because he is the kind of guy that every NBA champion has.
That's right.
He's just a baller, man, and he's the kind of player who, like you said, right? If he's not on your team, you hate him, but if he's on your team, you love him. I think back to
Jalen
ML
Green.
Carr.
Jalen Green.
Oh, well, Dalen Green, yeah. All right, very
But
good. So
Brooks
that
is
that box
much
is
more
checked.
skilled. Brooks is a much more skilled. Carr was decent in his day, but Brooks is a much more skilled player that gets under people's skin, and he's successful. That's the only thing you can say.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to call out. Last season, he averaged 20 points for the first time in his career. So now, not only is he a pass defensively who gets under your skin, but he's dangerous. He's a scorer. So yeah, he's a fascinating player. And like I said, every NBA champion has a player like that. We're not saying the Suns are NBA championship ready, but they do
No,
got a good piece in Dillon
no.
Brooks. All right, let's talk about a team that's, man, has really gone through it lately, and that's the Blazers. They were involved in a big trade during the offseason, of course. They lost Chauncey to their head coach, to this weird federal gambling thing. There's a lot of weirdness going on. But now that the dust has settled in Portland, they are incredibly guard heavy, right? So they traded for John Morant, and they had a lot of really good guards to begin with. So when that trade happened, my first thought was, this is a first domino. You got to get rid of some of the guards to fill out your roster. But nothing's happened, nothing but crickets. out of Portland. So they're super guard heavy. How are they going to make that work? They've got Ja Morant. They traded away Jeremy Grant. And so they've got, and you call this out, Damian Lillard, right? Don't forget he's coming back. Drew Holiday, Morant, Shaden Sharpe, Scoot Henderson. What? 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 What are they going to do there? What are they going to do with these players?
That's an interesting situation. They could be decent or they could just fall apart. The first thing before we talk about it is you have to talk about ownership. And it's Tom Dundon
Oh,
who
right.
just bought them.
Right.
And right now they're going through a crisis of they want repairs done to the arena. Dundon doesn't want to pay anything, and they're negotiating back and forth. And if you're a player on the team, usually you don't pay attention to ownership or any of that. But what they have to be concerned about is they're going to move the team. That could very well happen. And that becomes a concern. And Dundon, as the owner, has done a lot of things that have turned off players. Like in the playoffs, he didn't take his two-way players to their game on the road. He's done a lot of things that don't, even with what he did with Thiago Splitter, he did a great job last year. He's now in Chicago because Dundon interviewed everybody in the country, except me. But he interviewed everybody to find a coach, and he ended up with McInerney, which is a good choice. But the way he did it has to upset players. So there's a lot of stuff going on. And I'll just say this. Damian Lillard came back because he loves Portland. What happens if they're out of Portland in a year or two or three?
That's
I think
wild.
they, I
Right.
think they have to stay there for 3 or 4 more years. But my point being, it's not good. And think about the players have to uproot family and all that stuff. So there's a lot on the team's head besides basketball.
Yeah.
5 guards, and they're not trying to trade one of them. I was
Right.
surprised when Jaylen Brown was on the market. I thought they might get into that because he can play the 3 and get rid of 1 or 2 of those guards just to do something to get themselves a little bit better and also get away from having 5 guards. You don't have a lot of minutes here for 5 guards unless you use one of them at a 3, and then
Right.
it gets a little better. But then what is Danny Alvia? He's not a 4. You got a lot of issues here, and they've got to figure it out. They did resign Robert Williams, so they do have a decent. Klingon and him are decent, but there's just issues that non-team wise that could hurt them. And by the
Yeah.
way, Morant and Lillard probably will be the 2 starting guards. What do you think? Will Avia be recognized now as the best player as he was last year? And how will that work out? There's a lot of questions to
Yeah.
ponder in this situation. Think about it. Go ahead. You wanted to ask?
Well, no, it's a great point. And my knee jerk is that Dame Lillard is the face of that team because of the history. So when you have Portland versus the Celtics, it's going to be a picture of Dame
Of
and a
course.
picture of not Jalen
Tatum.
Brown, the other guy,
Tatum.
Jason Tatum. But the best player on the Portland Trailblazers is Avia. That's it. So John Morant it's going to be a weird situation John Morant finds himself in. And that's going to be the biggest challenge, I think, is massaging that ego and getting Ja to fit. Because I don't know how he fits. Because he's not the best player. He's not the face of this team. And he was both when he was in Memphis. So that's going to be tricky.
And Scoot Henderson was playing good basketball by the end of
Good
last
point.
season. What minutes are going to be for him? So
Yeah.
there's so much going on, and Darren Sharpe is another player that can score.
Yeah.
What minutes are there for him?
Yeah.
There's so many. It's a mess from
Yeah.
ownership
Bottom
down.
line. Yeah.
Yeah, and
I think
I'd be remiss not to mention Camara, who's one of the best defensive players in the league. Kamara, whichever way you want to say it, but they've got talent. But I don't know. I don't know how that's going to work
it's
out.
messy, and that's you hand the keys to a rookie head coach. That's rough, man.
After firing a popular head coach who did a
Right.
great job in a bad situation.
That's rough.
Yeah.
So we're going to put a pin or a period at the end of Portland by finishing here before we move to the Warriors in the time that we have. You started by saying a lot of times successful franchises directly link back to the owner. Good owners tend to win, bad owners tend to not, right? And there's some one-offs. If I Googled Blazers owner weird decisions, and it's a long list. I'm not going to read it all to you, right? Refuse to let two-way players, you call that out. Require team staffers to check out a hotel rooms hours before team buses left to bypass late checkout fees. Come on, man. Canceled free playoff t-shirts for fans attending home games. Forced out prominent voices like play-by-play announcer Kevin Calabro.
Calabro.
And it
He's an
goes
old
on
timer.
and on. That's wild. So you've got spotty ownership, you've got a head coach, and you've got a weird guard heavy situation. Good luck to Portland. The Warriors are in a different spot altogether, and it's sad to see it end like they did, like it's ending. I think I get the sense that the Warriors put a lot of their eggs in the LeBron basket, and it didn't pay off. And now they're left with an exciting rookie, Yaxel, who won MVP in Summer League, which means absolutely nothing. But he does look like he's going to be certainly a rotation player for them. But is this what Steve Kerr signed back up for? It's messy in Golden State. Let's look at what they did. They re-signed Porzingis, Anthony Melton, but of course they're old and they're waiting on Jimmy Butler to return. What do you envision for the Warriors?
There's two stories I thought. First of all, if you watched San Francisco last year or Golden State, you felt Steve Kerr checked out quite often. Is he going to be knowing that this team is not, if they're a playing team, they'll be lucky? Is he going to be re
Yeah,
energized? And then the other story, and it's really a sad one in a lot of ways, the Steph Curry situation.
yeah,
Because you really can't start rebuilding if somebody's making 70 million. It makes it hard. And he wants to stay with one team for his whole career.
sure.
So you really have some issues there. He can stay, but it's really not good. And does he want to go somewhere and chase a ring as LeBron did? Or is he very happy finishing it out with Golden State? So there's a whole bunch of things. They're not all good things. Hopefully, Kerr is energized and wants to coach. Hopefully, it's just a problem hanging over the franchise because you don't
Wow.
want him to retire because he's great to watch. But when he's there, that's a problem. It's a real problem,
Yeah.
and they've got to figure it out and what they want to do. And by the way, Curry gets hurt a lot more now as he ages. So what are you going to get out of 50 games? It's just not a good thing. And a lot of those guys, Porzingis, Horford, Curry, Draymond, they don't like to play back to backs. You got some, and Jimmy Butler hopefully comes back, but he's not going to play back to backs either as he's trying to heal. So it's a whole who knows type situation.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's sad, right? Anytime you see a dominant franchise on their last legs, we've seen it. We've seen it in Boston. We've seen it in LA, and you rarely go out on top, right? It doesn't happen where you win it all and then you walk away and you blow it up. Let's let the next run, the next group of players give it a shot. That's just not how it happens. You win it all and then you get old, and we all watch it happen, and it's kind of sad. This is the last year on Curry's contract. He's unrestricted free
He's
agent at the
supposed
end
to
of the year.
be he's supposed to be re-signed this summer, but the logical thing is you trade Curry and start over. Two problems. Curry probably doesn't want it, and he
Sure.
deserves say in what happens to him.
Yep.
The other problem is Steve Kerr's got a 2-year contract.
Yep.
If you're going to start over, you need somebody there for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And I don't think Kerr is going to want to win 25 games in a season.
Yeah.
And I don't know if
Yeah.
he's going to handle that. So the direction of the team through Kerr is not the direction that they need to take. There's so many conflicting things going on here that it's not going to end good for anybody there.
Yeah. 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 Tough times in Golden State. Unfortunate. It would have been nice, I think, to see LeBron there and see him and Curry and Draymond and that dynamic would have worked out. I think it would have been fascinating. But on we go. It didn't work out. You heard the shot clock go off. We have suffered another shot clock violation, but that's okay. That's what we do. That is it. Our time is up. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Make sure to read Steve's entire 13 Rules or NBA Thoughts article. We will link it wherever you're watching or listening to this today to get all of his thoughts on the East and the West. Go back a couple of weeks. You'll get them all. And then, of course, join us next week for more NBA Random Thoughts. Steve will talk then.
Talk to you. Take care.